Hello and welcome everybody! In today's Lightroom video I'm gonna show you how you can take a pretty boring and pretty bad raw file like this and how you can turn it into a really interesting, dynamic and also very colorful picture, while of course showing you every single step from the very start to the finished and fully edited picture. Make your own professional photography website or portfolio with SmugMug. SmugMug offers beautiful templates, it is 100% customizable, unlimited storage on any plan, and it starts from as low as $3 a month. Check out the link in the description to learn more and to get your 14-day free trial today. Alright, first of all, I'm just gonna bring up the shadows just so we have a lot of details to work with, and I'm also gonna bring down the highlights so we also have a lot of details in the clouds and in the sky. Then I'm gonna add a little bit of contrast, but really not too much. I don't want to make it look something like that. But around 40 works pretty well here. I'm also gonna bring down the blacks just a little bit to once again make the blacks even darker to enable more contrast in the picture and to make everything look a little bit more interesting. Then the whites are a very important thing, and here you definitely want to bring them to the right. You can hold down the Alt key to see wherever anything clips, and generally you don't want to clip anything. However, if it's really just a very small spot, it doesn't really matter that much, but you definitely don't want to make it look something like that. So I'm gonna bring that down just to something like this. I think that works pretty well. Then clarity is a very important slider, but I also want to try out minus clarity because it does work in some pictures. But here I think I'm gonna add just a little bit. I don't really want to go for a very HDR-ish look like this, but really just around 15 kinda helps with the textures, and I do think that looks a bit better. Then the color temperature is probably the most important slider here, because you see everything is kinda bluish and I really don't like that here. So what I'm gonna do is just bring that to the right and really warm up the whole picture. Once again, with any of these sliders you don't want to go too far, but I am going to add quite a bit of warmth here. Then I think the picture may just have a little bit of a greenish tint, so I'm gonna add a little bit of magenta here. And lastly, what we would have in the basics adjustments is the vibrance and saturation. I would generally suggest you to add vibrance over saturation because it adds color more subtle and in a more natural way. So I'm gonna do that here because it's a raw file and because I really want to add some colors. And I think that works pretty well. So let's just quickly see from before to after, even though we're of course nowhere near done yet. A lot more monotone for one, but also a lot more dynamic, colorful, and I think a lot more pleasant to look at. Then the tonal curve, I really like to bring up the highlights here. These highlights down here are very different than the highlights in the basics adjustments. They will just bring up the very bright parts, so that way you can get some more dynamic and even some more complexification in the lighting. And with the rest of these sliders, just play around with them. There's really no set tactic. And that's what I'm gonna do here. Really not too far with either one of them, but I think that look looks pretty good. So here's before the tonal curve, here's after. A little bit more subtle and at the same time a bit more contrast. Then HSL sliders, I'm gonna leave them out here because they really don't have too big of an impact. But split toning is very important, especially in a very colorful picture as this one. The first thing I'm gonna do here is go to this little box next to the highlights and play around with all sorts of different colors. And I could actually go for kind of a bluish color like this. Actually that doesn't look bad, but let's just see how the warmish color would look like. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that looks bad either, but I just think the bluish color has a little bit of a, a certain magic, and it's not as common to see. And you might ask yourself why add blues here when you recently warmed up the whole picture. Well, thing is, the tonal curve really just adds color over the entire picture very, very evenly. And of course, as we all know, color naturally comes from the light. right. So by going to the split toning and adding color there, it's a very, very different sort of color that looks oftentimes a lot more natural and is a lot more selective. So then shadows, it's also a thing that you can play around with, even though it doesn't have that big of a difference as the highlights. But I'm still gonna play around with that here. I definitely don't want to add any more blues, but maybe I'm actually gonna add a few warm tones here, really just a hint though. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So here's before the split toning, here's after. So you see, it's quite a bit of a difference, and especially in terms of the differentiation of the colors, it really, really complexifies the picture. Then detail tool. You know what? I'm actually gonna play around with that. I'm just gonna zoom in 1:1 real quick. And first of all, you just want to bring the color slider to the right, and that will get rid of the purple and green sensor noise in your picture, which in return makes your picture look a lot more clean, and it really doesn't have any bad impact. So just bring that to 80, even 100 if it's needed, and a really amazing slider. Then noise reduction is actually a tool I really don't like because it really decreases a lot of the sharpness as well as of the detail. But because I shot this picture at 400 ISO here, and I've raised the shadows so much, I really have to add a little bit of noise reduction. But if you want to add any, definitely don't go too far. And with the sharpness, always want to add sharpening, even if you just make a picture for Facebook. As you can see here, as I bring that to the right, even fully zoomed out, it really looks a lot more crisp and a lot sharper. I would go from anywhere from 50 to 80, depending on your lens and picture. And then very important, press down your Alt key, bring the masking slider to the right. So you want to make sure that none of the non-textured surfaces are going to get sharpened. So that's a pretty cool picture in itself, but of course just a mask. So here's before any detail tool, here's after. And if you're watching this in full HD, you will probably even see the difference fully zoomed out. But of course, especially if you're gonna print your picture, that's gonna have a huge difference. Then down here at the lens corrections, just click on remove chromatic aberration, and what this will do is get rid of the green and purple fringing on the high contrast edges. It might not do a perfect job, but it definitely looks a lot better than before, and you can also play around with these sliders to fine tune that. And second of all, and the last thing in the lens corrections, what I'm gonna do is enable profile corrections, choose my lens, which in this case is the Canon 18-55 kit lens, and that will just get rid of the distortion. So really nice tool, and I would definitely just suggest you to enable profile correction as well as remove chromatic aberration. Then in the effects, we're nearing towards the end of the global adjustments. Here you can add vignetting, and vignetting is a very important part of your picture because it can really help to give more attention towards the center and also make kind of the whole mood a bit darker, a bit more gloomy as well as mysterious. So it doesn't work in every single picture, but at least try it out. I think around 25 works pretty well here, and I might even enable a little bit of the feather so everything is a bit smoother than before. So here's before any vignetting, here's after. Once again, a lot more attention towards the center and makes everything seem a little bit darker, and I think it works a lot better for the overall sunset mood. Then camera calibration is the really last thing, and here you would have primary color sliders. Once again, they don't have too big of an impact, so I'm just gonna leave them out. But profile, you definitely want to go through all of these profiles and see what it does to your picture. What this will do is just change the color, the vibrance, the shadows, just kind of everything of your whole picture. And just stick with whatever you like best. Once again, that's kind of a thing that there is not a set tactic to do. It's very, very different with picture to picture. But once again, let's just go through all of these, and I think that is almost a bit too dull. I don't necessarily think that does too big of a change either. I really do like this kind of look, camera portrait, And yeah, I think at the end I'm going to leave it at camera portrait. Here would be at Adobe standard, which we had it before. And here is at camera portrait. So a little bit of a difference. In a lot of pictures it will have an even bigger impact, but definitely a little bit better than before. Then I think we're done with the global adjustments, and now we're gonna go into the local adjustments. And the local adjustments are really the part where you're gonna make your picture truly unique and truly special. So first of all, I'm just gonna grab this spot removal tool and get rid of this line right here. You can just click on a line if it's straight like this, and go to the other end and shift click, and it will get a whole line that will get rid of a line, for example. And I mean, not a great job, but it definitely does the job. You could of course try to right click, select new source, but I'm just gonna leave it there for the sake of simplicity. And we would have another line, but I really don't mind this one, so I'm just gonna leave it there. And then the next thing is adjustment brush. I just used adjustment brush to add vignetting or to change the exposure in a very large area that I can't do with the graduated filter. And in this case, I'm just gonna add some more vignetting. Just wanna make sure that your feather as well as your flow is to 100. So everything looks very organic and very natural. So once again, just adding some vignetting on certain parts can really help to get more attention towards the center. And by using the adjustment brush, you can of course just choose which corners you want to add it in. So I think that does a pretty good job. Here's before the adjustment brush, here's after. Really not too big of a difference. And then for the next part, I'm just gonna grab a graduated filter, drag it over the sky, and you know, it's not a perfect horizon because we have all of these trees and these houses, but I'm still gonna increase the shadows here, and the reason I'm doing that is to lift some of these dark parts in the clouds, and it's not too big of a difference, but because this is a pretty bright picture, I don't like that some clouds are very dark because that really adds too much contrast and it just doesn't work that well, so I'm just gonna raise them here. You could of course go minus contrast, plus contrast, depending on your liking, but I'm actually gonna go just a little bit into the minus here. And also, if your sky is a little bit too bright, you can also bring down the exposure like this. Keep in mind that if you have an horizon like this, if you want to do a more severe adjustment, you really have to grab an adjustment brush and make sure that none of these trees or houses are selected, because otherwise, you see, it just doesn't look natural anymore. But that said, if it's really just a little bit of a slider, it doesn't matter so much. And then I have a little trick that I use to complexify the lighting even more. So first of all, grab a graduated filter and drag it over one half of the picture with a very, very soft edge. And then you just kind of want to look at the lighting scheme. So here, it seems maybe that the light is kind of coming from the right. However, if I would make this filter according to the lighting scheme, I would kind of make some of these dark shadow parts brighter. So that's not really what I want. Instead, I'm going to go a little bit angled into the other direction, just something like this. Really gonna fine tune that here and go a little bit into the plus exposure, really just a little bit. And I'm gonna do the same with the exact opposite of the picture, so pretty much in parallel, do another graduated filter on the picture and go a little bit into the minus exposure. And the reason why I'm doing that is to complexify the whole lighting scheme even more. And if I show you the difference from before those two graduated filters to after, you will see that it does have a slight difference in differentiation as well as in complexification. So that's just kind of a little trick that I've found out over the years, and I really like to use that in my pictures, especially if you have a very bright sky and a pretty dark foreground. So that said, I think we're done with everything except with the dodge and burning. And dodge and burning is just adding plus or minus exposure over individual parts of your picture, and it's a very kind of complex thing at first. At the end, if you know what it does and you get a hang of it, it's pretty easy. But I've done a complete tutorial about dodge and burning, but pretty much you just want to make sure that you have your feather at 100, you invert the mask, and I always like to start with plus exposure. So that's what I'm gonna do here, and just go over some of these areas on the picture that I think could use a bit more exposure, are a bit dull as they are right now. So you always want to make sure that everything looks natural, that you adjust the actual sliders, that you don't make it look unnatural. For example, something like that, of course, way too bright. Really just a hint to complexify, to make everything more interesting without really your viewer even noticing that you've done anything. So I'm gonna do that relatively quick, and you could even mix that with color. For example, if you have a very colorful sunset, that's kind of a thing that I use sometimes. Just go here into color and maybe add some warmth. But here I really don't think it's too necessary, at least not for the filters here on the ground. And you know, actually I wanted to make this video relatively short, and I was even thinking about skipping the dodge and burning. But since this is one of the most important as well as one of the kind of more interesting parts of editing a picture, I think I'm just gonna leave it in and show you every single step I do without any cuts. So just to show you real quick from where we started, here's before dodge and burning, here's after, and you see it's just a lot more interesting, but I'm still gonna add some other filters. You can of course always stack them on top of each other as well. And you know, maybe I'm actually gonna add a little bit of color on some of these filters on the house walls. So let's just go into the orange, something like that. Then adjust the size. And the great thing about these radial filters is that you can just go back to a single one that you've added previously and adjust something there without having any adjustment on any other filters. So that's a thing that you could not do with the adjustment brush, for example. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more color, and you know, you can really go crazy, zoom in 1:1 and just add very small filters over very small areas, but I'm gonna keep everything relatively simple here. So right click duplicate, maybe some very small ones on some of these windows as well as some of these other parts on the picture. Once again, I have made a complete dodge and burning tutorial, so if you're really interested in that, then I would suggest you to check out the link in the description somewhere, and there is like a half an hour tutorial about that. But for the sake of keeping the video at least a little bit short, even though it's probably gonna be 25 minutes at the end, I think I'm just gonna say that I'm done with the plus exposure rail filters, the plus exposure dodge and burning here, and I'm gonna go first of all show you the before and after any dodge and burning, and then go into the minus exposure rail filters. And this is also very important to add more contrast, just kind of go in between some of these plus exposure filters that you've added previously, and that way you can make your picture even more interesting. I wouldn't say that the negative exposure filters are quite as important as plus exposure ones, but they are definitely also have a pretty big impact. So right click duplicate, maybe another one on this tree right here, and you see through all of these plus and negative exposure rail filters we kind of have a nice pattern on this tree, from dark to bright to a little bit dark, and that's really what you want to use these for in your picture. So right click duplicate once again, maybe another one on the bottom. And just it's always worth to kind of take a second look at your picture and really see where one could be needed. So I think here, just angle it correctly. And I think that's honestly pretty much it. Maybe another one on the bottom. But yeah, that definitely does the job. So here is before any dodge and burning, and here is after. And I mean, it has a very big difference, especially in these houses. You can see how everything looks very interesting. Might have overdone this one right here. But other than that, I really think that dodge and burning is so valuable, and you should definitely take advantage of it. So let me think, is there anything else that I want to do before I say that I'm done with this photo? And you know, I could actually crop the photo to something like that. And maybe that will work. It definitely adds a little bit more actual censure, or a bit more attention on the actual censure. Maybe I even want to take this farther. And it's actually quite difficult. Let me just quickly see from the before and after. So here is before the cropping, and here is after. You know what, I'm just gonna leave it how it was. That's really, you know, at the final stage, I just try out some different things that I think maybe could work. And if they don't, of course you're in Lightroom, so you can always just undo something. And in terms of the vibrance and saturation, I might just go a little bit further into the vibrance to make everything pop even more. And when I come think of it, I might as well grab an adjustment brush, go into the plus shadows and just go over these still kind of dark parts in the clouds and make them even brighter. Maybe I even have to add a little bit of plus exposure, but once again, that way the whole sky looks a little bit more even, and I really don't think that dark, stormy clouds work in this particular photo. And you know what? I might even grab an adjustment brush here, go into the minus saturation, and a little bit into the plus exposure just for this area in the sky right here. I actually cannot stop thinking that the sky still is a little bit too bright, so I'm gonna real quick grab this adjustment brush and just kinda drag it over the sky and make everything a little bit darker. Once again, real quick without too much fine tuning. You would of course want to do this a lot more careful if you would edit this picture for yourself. But yeah, I think that does look a little bit better, might even bring up the shadows nevertheless. But yeah, I think I'm finally done with the whole picture, really nothing else I'm gonna do to it. So let's go here into the history and see where we started at. And this is the raw file. As you can see, very dull, very boring. The sky is way too bright, really dull shadows, almost no color. And this is the picture at the end. And I really think that it ended up pretty good. Keep in mind that this is a YouTube edit, so I've mainly focused on showing you all of the sliders, all of the tools, as well as all of the techniques that I use in my own editing, rather than really making a single adjustment perfect. And of course, the starting point isn't that great either, so if you're gonna start off with a very good raw file, you're always gonna end up with a much better picture, so also keep that in mind. And of course, you don't necessarily have to go as far as I have done with this picture. I really just like a very vibrant and very dynamic kind of style, but you could still use some of my techniques and just go maybe half as much as I have gone. So I think that sums it up. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you would like to see more videos just like this one, other Lightroom tutorials, landscape edits, and even some on-location photography videos in the near future. Also, if you really liked it, sharing it with your friends, if you of course think they could find it helpful as well, or leaving me a like would really help me out a lot and is hugely appreciated. Anyways, I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day, and as always, take care. And why not also take care of your pictures by displaying them in a way they're meant to with your very own photography website or portfolio? With SmugMug you can do just that and build your own website from as low as $3 a month. It has beautiful templates to choose from while still being 100% customizable. It starts from as low as $3 a month. It has unlimited storage on any plan, so you can literally upload 50,000 pictures. It has excellent 24/7 customer support, and it is also used by professional photographers such as Benjamin Van Wang, Chris Burkhardt, and Alia Locardi. So if you're interested in building your own website, then be sure to check out the link in the description to learn more, and you even get your 14-day free trial without any payment information required, so you can really try out everything for yourself. And after 14 days of trying out everything, and if you really like everything, you also get 15% off any subscription. So build your own website today and go to the link in the description and get your 14-day free trial today. I can't stop thinking.